The night in Kpanche was eerily quiet, save for the occasional chirping of crickets. Dane held her daughter, 𝐾𝐲, close as the bus bounced along the uneven road leading to Lokoja. Her heart raced with every mile that took her farther from her hometown. She glanced down at the baby, who had finally drifted off to sleep. Her tiny face serene despite the chaos surrounding them. Dane's mind played the events of the past few hours. She had stolen 𝐾𝐲 from Gata's mother Penny during her father's burial. It wasn't a decision she made lightly, but she couldn't bear to be separated from her daughter any longer. The look of confusion on Penny's face as she realized the baby was missing haunted her, but Dane pushed the guilt aside. "She is my child," Dane whispered to herself. "No one will love her like I do." By the time the bus arrived in Lokoja, the sun had begun to rise, casting a golden hue over the city. Dana struggled with the baby and her small bag as she navigated the bustling bus station, asking for direction to the Ilori-bound vehicles. Her body ached from the journey, but the thought of seeing her elder sister Zuma gave her strength. A kind man, Rizama, helped her find the right bus. "You are traveling alone with a baby? That's brave," he said, giving her a sympathetic smile. Dane nodded, too tired to explain her situation. She climbed into the bus, securing a spot by the window as the bus began the long journey to Ilorin. She leaned back and let her thoughts drift to her sister. Zuma had always been the dependable one in their family. Though she had married with 2 children of her own, she had promised to help Dane when she called her after the burial. "You will be safe here," Zuma had assured her. "It wouldn't be easy, but we'll figure it out together." When Dane finally arrived in Ilorin, Zuma was waiting for her at the bus park. The 2 sisters embraced tightly, tears streaming down their faces. "You look so thin," Zuma said, holding Dana at arm's length. "You have been through so much." "I just want to start over," Dane said, her voice trembling. "For 𝐾𝐲's sake." Zuma's husband, Momo, loaded Dane's bag onto his motorcycle, and they rode to the small apartment Zuma called home. It wasn't much, a 2-room flat in the outskirts of Ilorin, but to Dane, it felt like a sanctuary. In the days that followed, Dane began to adjust to her new life. Zuma introduced her to small trading opportunities in the local markets of Oja Oba and Oja Tuntun. Dane would wake up early to prepare small snacks and foodstuffs, which she sold to commuters and workers. It wasn't glamorous, but it put food on the table and kept her mind focused. 𝐾𝐲, now 4 months old, became the center of Dane's world. The baby's laughter brought light to even the darkest day. Zuma's children, Rio and Lade, adored their little cousin, often helping to entertain her while Dane worked. But life wasn't without its challenges. Dane often felt the sting of judgment from some of Zuma's neighbors. Another single mother, they would whisper, "These girls from Kpanche don't know how to keep a home. Dane pretended not to hear, but the words cut deep. At night, when Kpanche was asleep, Dane would sit outside and let the tears flow. Zuma would often join her, offering silent support. One evening, Zuma handed Dane a brochure of the College of Education in Ilorin. "You have always talked about wanting to do more," Zuma said. "Maybe this could be your chance." Dane stared at the paper. Her heart pounded. Going back to school felt like an impossible dream. "I can't afford this," she said, shaking her head. "We will find a way," Zuma insisted. "I will help you with Kpanche, and you can save up from the market. It wouldn't be easy, but you are stronger than you think." The idea took root in Dane's mind. She began saving every extra kobo she earned, cutting down on her own needs to put away a little at a time. The days were long, and the nights were even sleepless, but the thought of creating a better future for Kpanche kept her going. Meanwhile, news from Kpanche continued to trickle in. Gata had moved to Abuja with 𝐒𝐲𝐵𝐵, the woman he had impregnated after Dane. They were now married, and Penny had reluctantly accepted 𝐒𝐲𝐵𝐵 as her daughter-in-law. Dane felt a pang of anger every time she heard his name, but she reminded herself that her focus was on her daughter, not her past. One day, while selling snacks in the market, Dane overheard the conversation between two women. "You know that girl from Kpanche is doing well for herself," one of them said. Dane looked up, startled to realize that they were talking about her. The women noticed her and smiled. For the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of pride in herself. Balancing school, work, and motherhood was a monumental challenge, but Dane refused to give up. Through it all, she held on to one truth. She was building a future not just for herself, but for Kpanche. And that made every sacrifice worth it.